this is Renna from Renegade Cosplay, and I am back! 3 years ago, I made videos about a wonderful material that I called Sintra. I'm back to talk about it again with a few clarifications. I've learned a lot in the last 3 years, and I want to share what I've learned with you. So, first thing I want to mention is the word Sintra, actually. Sintra is a brand name, a lot like Kleenex or Band-Aid. Usually, if you ask for a Kleenex and someone gives you a Puffs, you're not going to complain about it. So I just want to make you aware that Sintra is a brand name for a PVC sheet. And there are lots of other types of PVC sheets out there that all do virtually the same thing. I'm going to be talking a lot about my build of Titania from Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn, which was made entirely out of ProjectPVC. I don't think I've ever actually worked with brand name Sintra. I've just worked with whatever PVC I could get off the internet, and this was way better than the stuff I used to get off eBay. One thing I love about the Palite ProjectPVC is that it's really easily accessible. You can get it online at Amazon.com, HomeDepot.com, in thicknesses of 3mm and 6mm and various colors, so no more buying from shady eBay retailers. It's also much more malleable than what I've worked with previously. It bends without snapping, it just gives. I mean, you put enough pressure on it and it'll snap, but it's very forgiving. So, let's get into the nitty-gritty, shall we? When working with PVC, you're going to need patterns. I recommend using poster board to create your patterns. It's stiffer than paper, but it acts very similarly to PVC in the way that it bends and moves. These are the pattern pieces for my pauldrons right here, which I'm going to be showing you a lot more about. Before you trace your patterns onto your PVC though, there's something you should know. PVC has a grain, meaning it has one way it will bend easier than the other. Here you can see if I try to bend it, it's quite stiff. But if I turn it 90 degrees and bend it again, I can almost completely bend it in half. This becomes really important if you're making a piece that needs to bend in order to fit on you. Here you can see me working with a bracelet, and the first bracelet I made facing the more malleable and bendable direction of the PVC, and I can slide it onto my wrist just fine. The second bracelet was made the opposite direction, and I can't get it open enough to even fit onto my wrist. Now that you've got your pattern pieces done, it's time to trace them onto the PVC and cut it out. I use an X-Acto knife with breakable blades, like a box cutter. PVC does not dull blades nearly as quickly as foam does, but it will still dull them, so it's nice to have several around. Take your time, make small cuts on rounded edges, try to make larger sweeping cuts in larger areas. I've found that it helps to make a small shallow cut to begin, and then use that as a guide for making the deeper cuts. Palite ProjectPVC I found cuts much easier than most PVC that I've worked with before. You can also use saws to cut PVC, like a handsaw or a table saw. My only warning there is to be careful of thin parts because the vibrations of the saw can cause the PVC to shatter. If you have any small round pieces or pieces that didn't come out quite smooth enough, take some sandpaper to them before you glue them to anything to make sure that you get them as smooth as you can. But don't sand the surface of your PVC yet. When gluing PVC, I work with PVC glue. This is the brand I used, purchased at Home Depot. The reason why I prefer this glue is because it creates a chemical bond between the two pieces of PVC, actually fusing them together. This makes it much easier to heat and shape because the two pieces are not coming apart. There's some debate about whether you should glue on layers before or after heating. I always prefer to do it before so that I know that I get a good seal and a good fit. There are some instances where you have to shape the base piece before the trim pieces, in which case just do the best you can, but PVC glue works then as well. After applying the glue as directed on the can, I like to apply small clamps just to make sure I get a nice firm hold. you're going to want to scrape off any of the excess glue that has gone out around the edges. It will help you get a smoother finish later. However, don't try and scrape too hard, because remember, this glue is melting the PVC. And if you try to pull off the glue when it's already dried, it will take some of the PVC with it. You can use other types of glue with PVC. I used to use Loctite super glue. The risk there is if you heat up Loctite super glue, you create an incredibly deadly and painful gas that is not good for you. Oh, PVC glue smells like death. So please work with it outside or with a respirator with all your windows open. PVC can be formed with heat. There are several different ways that you can heat the PVC. My personal preference is with a heat gun. I purchased my heat gun from Harbor Freight for about $10 and I've been using it for 3 years. It's kicking along. You can also heat up PVC by boiling it, placing it into boiling water. I do not like this method because I find that 1, boiling water gets everywhere and that's terrifying. And 2, the water on the surface of the PVC actually causes it to cool down quicker. You have less working time, and then you gotta put it back in the boiling water. There are people who like the boiling method because they say it reduces fumes, but it's not worth it to me. You can also heat up PVC in the oven. It's a great way to get a nice even heat over a large piece. The downside is heating up PVC does release fumes, and you are putting it in a place where you make food. So please, please be careful. Again, I prefer the heat gun method. I apply a nice even heat across the surface, giving extra care to places with trim that might need additional heating because they are thicker. When shaping PVC, you can run into a few problems. One of its biggest downsides is it really struggles to do compound curves. However, that does not mean it can't do compound curves. As you can see in the breastplate, there is a slight compound curve. That's because with the breastplate, I used a method that I call bullying, which essentially means forcing the PVC to do what you want. I also recently discovered a method employed by one of the Mandalorian mercs, in which she takes a board, cuts out a hole approximately the size she wishes her curve to be, then while heating from below, she presses a ball slightly smaller than the hole in the board through the PVC in order to get that rounded shape. I tried something similar with Titania's breastplate, where I used a large pot and a large inflatable bowl. It worked pretty well. It would definitely work better if I had someone heating from below while I was pushing from above, but for just me by my lonesome, I think I did all right. So that's the first way. You can bully the PVC into doing what you want. The second way is a method I call seaming, which I have going on here in the pauldrons, where in order to create this compound curve, it's just 2 pieces seamed together. Here you can see me shaping the outside of the pauldron and pressing it up against the edge, and then I bind them together on the inside with strips of Warbler. Alright, let's move on to sanding. Sanding is really important with PVC, however, it's very easy to do compared to Warbler. As many people know, Warbler has a very rough, grainy texture that requires a lot of finishing. There's new Warbler's Black Art, Warbler Transpa Art, and Black Art is supposed to have a smoother finish so it takes less priming, but PVC comes out smooth. You don't have to apply any layers of gesso or wood glue or resin. It's already smooth, it's already hard. However, after I glue my pieces together, I like to take a Dremel to the edges to kind of bevel them and round them out. This gives it a more finished and polished look. However, a Dremel is a little aggressive and can sometimes leave your beveled edges looking a little geometric. So then I will go over and hand sand with a finer grit. I do not recommend sanding your pieces until you have heated them. If you heat up PVC after sanding, any scratch marks you have left in the surface will expand and accentuate. So you want to be careful to sand after you've heated the project. Now that your piece is totally shaped, sanded, and ready to go, it's time to prime and paint. There are lots of tutorials on the internet about painting, and it's not my strongest suit, so I'll leave that to other people. But I do want to talk to you about priming. By the time you're done working with your PVC, you're going to want to prime and sand. Because you've already sanded the surface of your raw PVC, you've probably left behind tiny scratch marks that you might not even notice until you paint, and then you realize they're there, and you're like, what do I do? That's what primer is for. I use this brand of sandable filler primer. What that means is as you paint it on, you will fill in imperfections. Please apply this in thin coats, as in thick coats it has a tendency to crack, which you would then need to sand and start all over again. Apply your primer and it will show you where your imperfections are. Often there are places that are left rough from the glue overlap that you have, or any places where you left too deep of a sanding mark. Figure out where those are and sand the surface with a fine grit. I usually do my first primed layer at a grit of 150. Then, after I've sanded, I prime a second time and I repeat the process. Is there any place that is still rough? If there is, I do it again, this time usually sanding with a 200 or 220 grit. And then I repeat. When I finally reach a point where I look at the primer and it seems smooth, I sand it lightly with an extremely fine grit of 300 or higher, and now it is time to paint. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it helped. I hope you've benefited from my 3 years of in-between knowledge. I really enjoyed making Titania and taking her to Nandeskan. Please, as always, please let me know if you have any questions, comments, concerns. If you think, oh hey, here's another glue that works really well, please feel free to share in the comments. Also, check out my Facebook page where I post regularly updates, works in progress, more videos, lots of stuff. So, hope you enjoyed this video. I really enjoyed making it, and happy crafting!